My Bigfoot sightings began in October of 2011. I attended a BFRO expedition in North Georgia that was hosted by Matt Pruitt. We spent several nights around the campsite, and we went to different areas. We had some different activity. One night we were out on a real high spot, came back down from the top of the mountain, went to bed, and I heard something walking around outside my tent. Didn't pay any attention to it till the next morning. I found out that a friend of ours from Wisconsin had something walking around their tent, which kind of made me wonder, what that first thing was. And the next morning when I woke up, I got out of the tent to go to the bathroom, and I heard a whoop from the hillside. And I didn't think anything of it, so I told Matt about it, and he said, "You heard a what?" I said, "A whoop." And he said, "That was pretty interesting." That was a pretty interesting first time for me being out. And we had a lot of really good activity. Like I said, we heard howls, we heard tree knocks, we heard all kind of different things. Me being new to the Bigfoot world, I didn't really understand a lot of the things that were going on. But as time went on, I became, better aware of the things that I was supposed to listen for and look for. That started me on a little path with a friend named John Eves, who I spent a lot of time with in the North Georgia mountains. And we spent quite a few times camping, quite a few times cooking a pot of chili and sitting around a campfire and just having all kind of activity around us. Spent a lot of time hiking, had some friends that would come in to see us, and we all had a lot of really good activity there. And the next time that I had anything happen to me, I think the first night we were there on one of our camping trips, we saw something standing between the trees. We couldn't make it out with our night visions. And so we decided that, we need to upgrade our equipment a little bit. So we spent a little bit of money on a FLIR, a non-recording FLIR. And we began to, to go around to some more places in the North Georgia mountains and do some more squatching. And, it was hit and miss a lot of times. You would hear things, but then you would try to filter out what you thought maybe it was or maybe it wasn't. And there were a lot of times we had some really crazy activity that couldn't be anything but what we figured was Sasquatch. Well, we went to North Carolina up to a place called Curtis Creek, and we camped there in, I think it was June of 2014. We had one come in camp the second night we were there and was walking around through camp, and we just happened to catch it on a FLIR, the non-recording FLIR, I'm sorry to say. But that was a pretty interesting weekend. I've done a little bit of squatching here in Mississippi. We've had quite a few sightings here. They were, little brief sightings, but we did have them. And it was only in the wintertime we were down here. It's really too hot to do anything down here in the summer. We went to a place one night, and we're sitting in the woods. We'd taken our chairs off into the woods. It was freezing cold. And me and another guy were sitting there, and we heard this long, like 15-second howl. And right behind it, there were some dogs started barking like crazy. And it was the coolest, prettiest howl you ever heard in your life. We all went to a place, the wildlife management area up here, and we're sitting there talking. And I heard a tree knock that was like 50 feet from me. And it was the prettiest knock you've ever heard in your life. Shortly after that, Finding Bigfoot came down and wanted to do a show here. I was on the show. We went out that night and we spent several hours in the woods looking and making howls and calls. And probably around midnight, we got a howl response followed by some coyotes, which was pretty interesting. After that, I went back up to North Georgia some more. We camped up in the Clayton area, and we had quite a few encounters up there. We had one sighting and quite a few encounters. There's no cemetery up there that we've had weird activity around too. We've had orbs. We've had all kind of things that we just couldn't explain. We've heard growls. One night, my friend John Eves was throwing rocks down a ravine and saying, here's something for you to play with. Next morning, the rock was sitting in camp outside of John's tent, which is pretty wild. And, we spent quite a bit of time up in that area. We squatched quite a bit in that one area and got quite a lot of results. One night it was pouring down rain. We caught one on a FLIR that was sitting up on a ridge looking at us but wouldn't move. We caught one in the woods paralleling us that would only move when we moved, and finally it just went away when we started walking toward it. And we worked that area quite a bit for quite a few years. I started doing expeditions with Lori Wade, and started in 2017 at the same spot pretty much. And we had myself and a group of ladies and another friend of mine that went out, and we had a ton of howls that night. And we had one run across the road, down the road from us. We were in like this little offshoot road, and in the light we could just barely see one run across the road back there, which is pretty wild. There was one of the kids saw it, and there was a lot of cool activity up there. 2018, I was in North Georgia again at another expedition Lori put on. We had worked a cul-de-sac on top of a mountain. We'd worked it for like 4 nights. And the final night, there were several of us up there. And we had walked the wood line quite a few times, had a lot of strange noise, a lot of strange activity. And as we left about 1 o'clock in the morning, got in my truck, cranked it up, turned it on, the lights came on automatically. And just as soon as the lights came on, something jumped across the road. And it was like maybe 10, 12 feet in the air. It jumped off a 7.5-foot embankment. The road was 20 feet wide. It never hit the road. It completely cleared the road. We were just in awe of what happened. Next day, we went back and looked, and there was some scratches on a tree about 6 feet away from the road going down the mountain. So the jump was about 26 feet. And that was a pretty crazy night. And back here in Mississippi, a friend of mine and I were in a spot with his son down the bottom around there was a little bamboo thicket. And we were sitting there, and it got dark, and all of a sudden the knock started, and we thought we heard something walking toward us. And we kept thinking it was going to be a game warden, because we had one of those little bitty solo stoves out there, and we thought that the game warden was going to come ask us what we're doing down there with the fire. But we never heard a game warden, never saw a flashlight, never saw nothing. But something came walking up beside us to both sides of us, walked all around us for about an hour back in there. And we got it on audio. Never could find anything with the FLIR because of the thicket, was so heavy around us. But it was a pretty cool night. My friend's son decided he was never coming back. So that was a pretty intense night. And this last time that I had an encounter was in North Georgia again. I was on another one of Lori's expeditions, and we were up on a mountainside in a clearing. And I was looking through the woods on the trail that came up from the bottom of the mountain. And I looked and I saw a tree, and I saw like a weird growth in the bottom of it. But the tree was kind of a grayish color, and the growth was like white. And it was shaped, had a cone head shape, and had like a shoulder. And I kept thinking, what the crap is that? What is that? And I called my friend Michael over there to look at it. And I gave him my FLIR, and he looked down there and he said, I don't see it. And I looked back, and whatever it was gone. Well, a friend of mine up there, Marcia, had a FLIR that recorded, and she happened to catch it through the woods. And the next day, a friend of mine named Tom, who does a lot of video analysis, Tom confirmed that we had caught a Sasquatch on tape. And that's pretty much all my adventures so far. I haven't been in the woods in quite a while.